welcome to Brooklyn. We're on the border of East Williamsburg and Bushwick, and I'm so pumped today to chat with Jamila Souffrant, who is the CEO and founder of Journey to Launch. Jamila has been podcasting for a number of years in the financial independence, retire early space. I met Jamila now in Brooklyn about 3 years ago. We've had many conversations about money, and I'm really excited to bring her back and now sit down and go deep and chat about how to reach financial independence in increasingly uncertain times. And Jamila, welcome.
Thank you, Grant.
So let's dive in. Let's tell the audience, who are you?
Oh my gosh. So it starts out as a little girl from the island of Jamaica. I always like to say the island, not the borough, Queens. Nothing wrong with Queens, but I'm just saying. And I was born to a single mom. She had me at 20 years old, which I can't even imagine, because I'm a mom now and I'm much older and have way more resources than she did. And I say all that because that shaped everything in who I am today. So she actually immigrated here first and had to leave me behind at 8 months old.
Wow.
So yeah, she came to Brooklyn, New York, 20 years old, left her baby behind and tried to establish herself.
Okay.
And so she worked like minimum wage jobs and saved up enough money to finally be able to kind of send for me and my grandmother.
Wow.
And I've been here since I was about 2 years old.
Okay.
I find that shapes like everything I feel about life and money, because watching her and my grandmother like come here with nothing and then work their way to stabilize themselves and give me a better opportunity inspires me and basically has gotten me to where I am today. So grew up in Brooklyn, loved Brooklyn, and basically went to high school here, went to college in Long Island, and I was lucky enough to get an internship in college through Inroads, which is an internship program that places minority students in Fortune 500 companies.
Okay.
With that, it was my first real taste of real money. I was getting actual money working for this corporation, and
corporate
I would get
money.
It was amazing to me about wow, this is really something that I can work towards, to earn a great salary.
Right.
With that money, I saved enough to buy my first condo in Dumbo, Brooklyn.
Which has probably gone up astronomically.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because when I went there to buy it pre-construction, it was nothing like the Dumbo we see today.
Right.
Totally nothing. And the really cool thing about that story is, and I always like to say this and give my mom credit, because she helped me with the first 10% down payment. It's not like she had a lot. She didn't own anything back then either. Some parents would be like, well, I don't own anything first. Why am I helping my 21-year-old daughter do this? She said to me, here you go. This is for your start. So she helped me with that first 10%. That was my first intro to what having money and capital could do for you.
Sure.
And it changed my life. It built me up to understand that there was more to life. And so I started working full-time in corporate America. And it wasn't until I was 31 that I had kind of my come to Jesus moment.
Yeah.
My realization that I wanted more out of life. And it happened because I was pregnant with my first son.
Okay.
And I was stuck in a commute. I was reminded of the things I wanted in life. And started to Google, how do I retire early?
Right.
How do I reach financial independence? And came across the world of financial independence, retire early, the FIRE movement.
And were you hooked immediately?
It took a couple years for me to evolve into what you see now today.
Right.
So I'd say around 2014, I discovered the FIRE movement.
Okay.
And I started to apply what I learned from the podcasts and blogs to my own finances with my husband.
Okay, slow and steady.
Well, I was hearing about all these people reaching financial independence or being able to quit their jobs. And they had regular jobs.
Right.
Sometimes, what I would perceive as probably making less than me. And I said to myself, well, we make a decent income together. My husband is a teacher. I worked in corporate America. We should be able to do something. And so we started to restructure how we saved and invested our money.
Right.
And we're able to do some amazing things in a couple of years. And then, of course, the progression after that became, I'm learning so much. I should talk about this more publicly for other people to learn. And that's kind of how Journey to Launch came to be, is that I started the blog in 2016 to share my journey.
So when you found the FIRE movement, what are those first steps that you took or that you recommend others take?
Yeah, I think first it starts in the mind and within, because if I didn't believe that it was possible for me, I wouldn't have tried it. Honestly, the first thing was, can I do this? And it was maybe. You should try.
Right.
So getting my mindset to the point where I literally was engulfing myself into the movement, listening to podcasts on that commute every day, reading blogs. So for anyone, it's really changing what's reality for yourself.
Sure.
What's the first step? And then it was okay, let's apply what you're hearing that they're doing to your own money.
Once you believed okay, maybe this is possible for me? Did you start saving more money? Did you reduce your expenses? Did you do both? What did that process look like?
Honestly, the first step, since I was not traveling on this journey alone, like I knew that my husband had to be on board, was to talk to him.
Yeah.
Like I literally came home and was like, what do you think about us retiring early? And he was like, because he's a simple guy.
Yeah.
He was like, what do you mean? Like he's just like,
I've met him. He's super chill. He's like real quiet.
Yeah, he's just like, what? He thought I was crazy. And so it was really talking with him about what our lives could look like in the future. Once our kids were like off in college, I was like, do you want to have to work, or do you want to, if they're playing, they're in college playing games, that we want to be able to go without asking anyone? And he was like, I want to do that. Once he was kind of on board, it was like, let's restructure how we currently spend our money, save and invest it.
Yeah.
First steps, looking at a budget, honestly. It's like not the most exciting thing to do, but it was the way that we were able to find how much more money we can save. Because at that point, we were doing the bare minimum.
So once you look at the budget, you figure out you have more money to save, did you need to change your investments, or was it more about just cutting back on your spending and everything else stayed the same?
Yeah, it was really about finding the extra money, or the money that we had really in front of us, to invest more.
Sure.
I was doing the bare minimum when it came to my 401k at my job.
Yep.
I think I was doing up to the company match.
Yeah.
And he had a 403b plan as a teacher. But what I learned through the FIRE movement was he also had access to a 457 plan. So he had access to 2 pre-tax retirement accounts.
Grail, right?
Yeah, and then I had access to 1. And so I was like, what would it look like if we could work towards maxing all 3 of those out? What's left over is what we have to live. And with that thought process, it helped us kind of like restructure how we were spending our money.
So do you think financial independence is available to everyone?
That's such a good question. So here's how I feel about it. I have a platform that talks about financial independence. I want to encourage everyone to begin the journey to financial independence. But I think it would just be wrong to not acknowledge that people have different starting points, and that for some people it does feel impossible, and they have a right to feel that way.
Yeah.
But I do feel like a certain level of financial freedom is possible for everyone.
So what are some of the unique challenges that women and women of color specifically face when it comes to managing their money?
It can seem overwhelming.
Sure.
And I think too, with work, like we've seen this with the pandemic, women have been impacted the most, women of color, in terms of their job, and especially parents, mothers.
Yeah.
Because before the pandemic, a lot was put on them anyway, as being just the primary parent and sometimes breadwinner.
Yeah.
And with the pandemic and, companies still wanting to see work being produced, and the uncertainty of schools and childcare, like it was a lot for parents, moms, women to face.
Sure.
And so with that, you saw like a lot of women leave the workforce, a lot of moms leave the workforce.
Yeah.
And so now they're possibly dealing with less income and having to juggle and manage that, and live their life. So it can be definitely a lot to manage.
So one of the things just culturally that's happened, over the past year because of the pandemic is there's been more of a light shined on the systems of systemic oppression and the wealth gap and the racial wealth gap. I mean, it seems like there are more and more stories, and more of the conversation has elevated to expose essentially a system that's set up primarily to maybe help white guys get richer, right? And certainly the rich get richer. But the conversation is much broader and much more in the open than it was, I know, even 2 years ago when we sat down to chat. Can you talk a little bit about where the conversation is, and how you feel about sort of the increased transparency and just the dialogue that's happening in that space?
The world took a pause, like everyone was paying attention, and for, I think, people of color and specifically Black people, what the world saw were things that we were dealing with all the time anyway.
Yeah.
But people didn't want to really think about it. They didn't need to think about it. And with the pandemic and being locked down, it was like, you have to face this.
Right.
So I think all in all, it's a great thing that this is getting attention. But I think for people of color and Black people, it's just like, we've been trying to get you guys to think about this for the longest, and no one cared. So with that, I think it's important to continue the conversation, but just not talk, like there be action. And when it comes to figuring out why there is a racial wealth gap, you have to go back to the history of this country. There were systematic things put in place so that Black people could not even build wealth. It was in law that we couldn't do certain things or couldn't own certain things. So I think with the light on this, it's up to actually, everyone. I don't like really putting the burden on us as Black people, but like the rest of our society to figure out, okay, what can we do to make things more even? And that's why I think talking about money in this way is one of the ways to do that. Like it's almost like this is the bottom up approach, kind of like the self-responsibility. What can you do with what you can control? And versus like, okay, but what can we change from the government systems down? Both of those things need to happen for change to occur.
One of the things I wanted to build off of one of the conversations we had previously when you mentioned the unique challenges that, African Americans and women face in a corporate environment. And I'm saying that through the lens of there's been so much conversation now around diversity and inclusion and all of these reports. There seems to be a lot of conversation, but when you dig in and you actually look at the diversity in the numbers, to me it feels a lot like just marketing speak, as opposed to actual action happening. Could you share some of the unique challenges? I remember you talking about you going in for a business pitch versus me being a white guy or being up for a raise, some of those unique challenges that were honestly really eye-opening for me and I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think that it's purposely being done by a lot of people, but you just don't know because most likely you haven't been put in a situation for you to understand or recognize it. Like I immediately recognize when I'm the only Black person in a room, even if it's a room of 5 people or a woman, right? And for some people, like if it's you, it's like, this is the team that I hired. These are my friends. Like it's not like you're consciously doing it. And I think that's the issue. It's almost like you have to almost force yourself to say, wait, am I actually viewing this in the right sense? Am I giving other people opportunities to be in the room? Because like you said, like a lot of people, a lot of companies put out statements and said, this is what we want to do. And I've seen it, I think in the space, especially like personal finance or just in entrepreneurship, there are a lot of initiatives and like they'll say like, oh, we're going to hire this person to do this thing because we're going to show that we're being diverse. But what I want to know is like, who is in the boardroom helping to make that decision? Because if you have me as the face doing this thing, that's one thing. But who's behind the scenes? Because that's actually where the real money sometimes is being made, right? In the boardrooms or in the equity of ownership. So I think it's something that we all just have to confront ourselves with. And I think some people don't because, they're afraid of what they may find. They may find that, wow, I participated in this quite a bit. But it doesn't mean that you can't like change it and make conscious efforts to do better. So I do think we're heading in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
How has your vision of what you want your life to look like changed since you started your financial independence journey? And I'm saying that just because I think a lot of money advice, it presupposes that who you are today is going to be the same person as who you're going to be in the future. So how has your view, as you've been more successful and saved more money and invested and had all these amazing opportunities, how has your vision for your life just changed in the last 5 years?
Where I am in the stage of the financial independence journey is work flexibility. So that is a stage I think most people can get to. So it's not that you never have to work again, but you can choose what you want to do for work. So I'm not financially independent, but I can choose now like the projects I take on for my business or just say I want to take a break. So my idea of what freedom looks like is based on my flexibility with my time and energy. And I think before when I was looking at it, it was all about like the numbers and not the quality of life. And I'd also say maybe it was also based more on a scarcity mindset. It was almost just like, what's the littlest that I can spend to be free? And now I feel like I'm in a position where, what's just the most optimal in terms of what feels good to spend on, but that I feel good living my life doing and that it's worth it to me. Like, and again, if it takes me longer to reach financial freedom or independence because of that, I'm fine with it. And I feel like I'm more in an abundance mindset. Like what I'm willing to spend on, what I envision my life as is different. Like when I first started, I was like, well, maybe I don't need, to travel certain places like to reach financial independence or when I get to financial independence. And now I'm like, no, what do you really want? And I do really want to travel with my family and to not backpack. With 3 kids and my husband. Like I want to sometimes stay somewhere really nice. And so I feel like now it's like if I have to pay more money for that, it's worth it because that's like the life experience and journey. So I just think, it's okay that your mind can change. Not everyone has to reach it through frugality. Not everyone has to do it the same way. You just don't stop. You give yourself grace and you keep going.
My heart just really hurts for people who feel, especially now, really stuck. You know what I mean? When they feel stuck often because of society and sort of the view of the American dream that society presents, or the stress that they inherited from their parents or culture or growing up, when in reality it's like most people, they're either really close or a couple steps away from a life they love. You know, maybe they're in a job they don't like, and so just being able to save up a little extra money to quit the job, or they don't like their relationship, and so just saving up, you know, some money so they can leave their relationship, or they don't like where they live, and so maybe saving up a little money so they can just move somewhere else or become an entrepreneur. It's like they're stuck, but they're so close. You know, they're so close.
Yeah, you're like usually one decision away from like a different life.
Yeah.
And again, I think for most people, it's awareness of what's possible and literally believing that. There's one thing that I feel like when I say it, it gives me hope, is that I really do believe, like, if you're like watching this, you know, I'm watching us right now, like, it just feels like there's a reason for that. Like, you know, call it kind of like whatever it is, but I often say that there's so many people who don't even know that this is a concept or that it exists.
Sure.
And if you stumbled across this somehow, like it's like a breadcrumb, like for your next step.
Yeah.
And I also think if you have an idea about something, like something that doesn't even seem like it's in your realm yet, like you have a goal or a dream, I like to say that that's your future self giving you a glimpse of what could be possible. Like it's literally your future self revealing to you what could be possible if you take some risk and some steps forward. And that makes me feel like, whether it's true or not, I think, honestly, it's what you believe. Whether it's true or not, if you believe it, it can be true. And so for me, when I think that way, and I think about the things I want in my life, I say to myself, there's a reason why I'm thinking this.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a nudge from my future self telling me what's possible.
Yeah.
And like, that's kind of what brings me forward. And so you don't have to maybe think that way, but I think you have to believe in something.
Yeah.
Or else, like, why would you move forward? And so like that positive mindset is important.
I love that. I love that. And this is one of the biggest things that I see in the space is so many people, they already have what they seek.
Yes.
And I'm saying that in your sense, you know, a loving partner, you know, loving kids, a loving family, a place you love to live, the ability to do creative work. How are you thinking about the future with global warming and pandemics and the economy and just the craziness that is projected?
Can I be honest? Like, I don't pay that much attention to all of those things.
Okay.
And it's not because I'm willfully trying to be ignorant, but it's for my own sanity. Yeah. Because if I woke up every morning and looked at all the issues of the world, I would not get out of bed. Yeah. You know, and so that does me no service. It does no service to my kids or to the people that are like in my community. Yeah. And so for me, I'm focusing on the things that I can control with obviously an eye and responsibility to the things that are affecting the world. Money is not just like for yourself. I think when I first started financial independence, it was more, okay, this is money for me and my family, and then we're good. Like, I'm financially independent. And now that my ideal of it has changed, it's more about having more money can help impact more things and people that I care about. It's expanded my mindset a bit. And so for me, I'm thinking more about how can I make a great impact with the words and the teachings or whatever I'm sharing on my platform, but then also make enough money to help those big causes. It's not just about me and what I can do for like my family. It's important, but what do we do after we reach that kind of comfort level in terms of giving back and helping? Thank you so much for hanging out, Jamila. This is so much fun, and I'm glad we got to continue the many conversations that we've had in the past and share it with the world. And I wish you nothing but peace and success. I look forward to the next conversation further down the road. Thanks, Grant. This was wonderful.